I saw this movie that I now deem to be the worst movie I've ever seen, what I would have said was the worst movie I've ever seen would have been Open Water. Did not enjoy that. I thought that was incredibly boring. Do you know what? You're all very shocked, but like, worst movie ever. So now my new favorite, least favorite, my favorite, least favorite, worst movie ever is Into the Woods, because it is goddamn terrible. Sorry, God, but you are damned. It's terrible. So basically, again, let's give a bit of context as to why this is the worst movie ever, because I could have just turned it off, and I didn't. For some reason, I decided to sit through the whole thing, and it was terrible. It was painful. I was on a flight from New York to the UK. So coming back from America is always pretty tough, innit? You've got like about 8 hours of jet lag because you've not slept and you've been in the airport. Plus you're on a plane and you're just like miserable and knackered after a wee holiday. So this movie was on the flight and I thought, well, you know, this is the kind of situation where I'm gonna watch something like this, where I'm not spending money to see it. I'm not like bothering anyone else, making anyone else in the house see it. So I stuck it on. 10 minutes in and it's flipping James Corden and his wee barren wife who just want a baby, and they're singing about wanting a baby for about 10 minutes and I'm like, okay, this is how this is gonna be, and it's just so terrible. So obviously you've got your fairy tale characters from all your different, you've got Jack and the Beanstalk, Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood, and there's other ones I'm sure, and they all sort of feature in this story in some way, and you'd think that would be great. I flippin' love Fables, I liked Once Upon a Time, all that sort of stuff, but Into the Woods is just terrible, I think because they try and make it a musical and James Corden. And like I said, it's completely my fault because I realised 10 minutes in that it was terrible, but for some reason I sat through the entire 90 minutes. Maybe I was too tired to turn it off, but my God, that has stuck with me as one of the most painful experiences of my life. Into the Woods can get into the bin.
Well, I need to preface this entry because I need to set some context, otherwise you just might think I'm a big old pervo or something if you don't already think that for whatever reason. So to set the scene, it's one of those late nights. It's about, 11 o'clock at night. I've got a couple of friends over. We've just had a big dirty takeaway. I'm full to the brim with cheesy pizza. And I haven't even been drinking, but we watched a couple of horror films before this and we want something to wind down. So we're in the depths of Amazon Prime. We're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling in the horror section, just seeing what trash we could find. So in a way, it's my fault because I've sought this kind of movie out. And then we come across The Legend of the Naked Ghost. It has this slapdash cover and it's 40 minutes long and it has this strange description. And we all kind of look at each other and think, we've got to figure out what this is. We've got to know what The Legend of the Naked Ghost actually is. So we click play, sit back. Again, I'm sort of, hallucinating on all this cheese that's amalgamated inside my body. And it starts off with this animation, this creepy as all hell animation that is entirely unrelated from the movie itself. So we're sitting through it. And there's a part of me that's genuinely wondering if I've just lost my mind, if I've just sort of hallucinating what is actually happening on the screen. But no, it's real, and then the movie actually starts, which is about a bunch of people going to this house, and then they get tormented by this ghost, and it's really bad, it's really poorly made, but at this one point, I kind of realized that they're cutting bits out, they're going to a scene, and then they're jumping to far later on in the movie, like things are missing. We're all thinking, we're not really invested in the movie, but I want the complete package. And we're wondering, why is this happening? What is going on here? And then we kind of put together that the cuts only happen when two characters start getting together, or they start kissing, or they go to bed. And then we kind of get the inclination that this might be potentially one of those softcore porn horror movies where people kind of do the dirty on screen, but it's been cut, so that stuff has been erased, and you're only left with the plot of a softcore porn movie. And it's terrible, obviously, and we were kind of invested in it, wanted to see where it went. I think we fast-forwarded through the end once we realised what we were in for. And then the worst part of it, though, is that not only is it a bad movie, but I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated why it had this animation at the beginning. I was fascinated why it was cut up, how it ended up on Amazon Prime. So I was going into IMDb, because there's no information on this film. I'm not even sure if we're going to have footage to put over the top of this to figure out what it was. And it turns out it was a cut-down version of another movie called Scared Topless, I think it's called, which is one of those softcore horror, erotic horror movies with all the juicy bits cut out. In 40 minutes of my life that I will never get back, I could have watched movie 43, or at least half of that, a billion times. I could have watched any of the other entries on this glorious list and probably had a better time, rather than this kind of shameful, sad experience that I had.
Right, now, this is technically the worst movie I've ever seen, but it is also a warm and firm favourite of mine because it is so ridiculously bad, and that is Troll 2, which is the peak of bad movies. If it's up there with The Room, maybe surpasses The Room as like best worst movie. And it's about this family who go on a little vacation, having a swap over with another family in the grand old town of Nilbog. We'll get back to that later. And they swap over with this other family to go and just chill in each other's houses and have a nice little time in this quaint little village, quaint little town full of quaint little people. But, right, what they don't count on is that this town is full of, no, not trolls, goblins. I tried to do a bit there. Right, hold on. But what they don't count on is the town being full of goblins. Not trolls, as the title would suggest, but goblins, yes. And basically, these goblins are vegetarians. They're not your average meat-eating goblin. They're the vegetarian, green plant feasting upon goblin who have human flesh and transform it into the greens that they can then consume by feeding them poisoned foods. This whole film is this family eating poisoned food and trying to avoid being turned into a plant. But once you've eaten poisoned food, you get turned into a plant. And there is so many ridiculous special effects. There's ridiculous little goblin people with rubber masks on. There's the ghost of Grandpa Seth that appears in the mirror like a floating little head. And the acting is atrocious, like atrociously bad, but so good, so wholesome. It's just, there's not much I can say about Troll 2 without just, you need to watch it, like you need to experience it. It's a visceral movie like thing to do. It's not something that can be spoken about. It's something that has to be seen to be believed. And if you need any like sort of anything that gives you a taste of it, it's the trailer with the boy going, "They're eating her, and then they're gonna eat me! Oh my god!"
Right, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. Yes, just like me, but not like me now. Like when I was younger, when I was even shorter and even sweeter. Little me, right? What did he love? He loved Batman, because all kids like Batman, and I loved Batman, but I was also like a miserable little goth at the same time. Like even before I knew what a goth was, I was tiny, just moody and broody all the time. And I loved Batman, the animated series, because it was all dark and broody, like my soul was. And then I saw the Tim Burton Batman films, and they were all dark and sinister and broody, like my soul was. And then for my birthday, there was a Batman film out. My mum was like, "Come on, my miserable little sugar plum fairy, I'll take you to the cinema to see the Batman film." I was like, yes, Batman understands me. Batman gets me more than anybody else does. And it was Batman and Robin.
No!
It was Batman and Robin. And I was like, yes, so goth, so dark. And it was just rubber nipples and Arnold Schwarzenegger doing like, "the dinosaurs!" And just the worst time I've ever had in the cinema, because I was like, this is awful. This is what trendy's like. But no, I just wanted my goth Batman, and I got George Clooney, Camp Arnie Batman, and just the exploding ice and all the puns and everything. So whenever anyone asks me what the worst film, the thing is, it's probably not even a bad film. I bet if I watched it back now, I'd be like, oh, you know what? It's good fun, this. But whenever someone says, what's the worst film you've seen? My mind goes, what is the worst time you've ever had in a cinema? And it was me just getting progressively more pent up and annoyed, like, this is Britney Spears Batman. Hate it. I want goth dark Michael Keaton back. I was in a proper little mood for like a week.
So I feel quite queasy, to be honest. I'm going to channel that into to remember how much I hated every second of this film. It's not The Last Jedi. It's Meet the Spartans, which I remember going to the local sort of shopping mall with this girl that I had a bit of a crush on. I thought we'll see a movie together. Maybe it'll be the thing that lets us get together. It wasn't. It was we picked Meet the Spartans. We didn't know anything about it, and it was like, you saw the poster for it, and there was just some quote about it being like an it wouldn't have been avant-garde. It would have been something about it being like an enjoyable time at the cinema, whatever. And through teenage eyes, I thought that'd be a nice laugh. And from the opening seconds, it's not. I don't even know who wrote it. I don't know who directed it. I don't know anything about it other than that I hated it, and it's complete turgid. I can't say the words on YouTube. Poop. And it was just, every single joke is so lame. It was part of that whole era when it was the scary movie, epic movie, date movie, which I know those were done by Seltzer and Freeberg, or whatever you call them. Is it the same people? Right. So yeah, those two. words I can't say on YouTube. And they made Meet the Spartans, and I just, from the opening few seconds, I remember just cringing and hating it. And there was a few people to the front of us walked out. It was quite an empty cinema anyway. And it was just that thing where we sort of lent in, like, and sort of said to each other, like, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll get better. And it just absolutely didn't. But we didn't stand up and get out because we'd already paid for it, and it wasn't worth sitting through. But that purgatorial hell I despise that movie. I always go to that if I have to talk about the worst thing I've ever been through in a cinema. It's that, Meet the Spartans, that word.
There are lots of very bad films. There are very few that I've actually walked out of the cinema for. There are only 3 of those. One of them was Holy Motors. It's very hard for me to say. Holy Motor, I can't even say it.
Holy Motors.
That's the one, which is nonsense, and I was so offended by how bad it was, and everybody else around me was like, this was a Cannes Film Festival because I'm very important. Everybody else around me was like standing up, applauding and being like, oh, this is so profound. And all I saw was a man eating a bunch of flowers and then getting his fake penis out. And that was the point where I had to go. I don't know why that was the combination. And the other one was Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, which I actually quite like now. I've seen it since then. They're not a bad film. The third is the worst film of all time, and it is White Chicks.
Ooh, that's like a cult classic to some people.
Cult meaning bad.
Yes.
Yeah. Nobody ever calls a cult classic a good film. So there you go. So basically, this came out of the back of the scary movie period where the Wayans brothers were the funniest people in cinema.
Yep.
I don't know who told them that.
It's my wife and kids.
Yeah. They told them.
Well,
But I can't tell your wife and kids.
Popped in.
It's basically, the whole plot is just an excuse to get those two young black men to dress up as young white women, and then for that to be the only joke, which is all right. I mean, there's been worse premises for films, but the whole thing is sort of like, it's a gross out comedy that is not funny at all, so that's half of it cut off, and then the gross parts are just puerile, childish, and that's why people love it. But it's awful and offensively so, and it's bad. The best thing about it is there's two, so they play a couple of characters basically, but those two characters are actually real people. Imagine being the actors, right? Yeah. Playing the two real people who are like, yeah, you actually look like Marlon Wayans if he was dressed up in a rubber face. Imagine being those guys. That's who I feel sorry for.
It's hilarious.
It's not.
Did you sit through the whole thing?
No, I didn't. So I've actually seen it a couple of times. I went to the cinema to see it, and it was one of the worst days of my life. Because of that, it wasn't really, it was pretty bad. And then I thought, you know what? It can't have been that bad. There have been films that have been bad and I've watched them again. They've been like, yeah, actually I was just obviously having a bad day. And I watched it again and I don't understand how people think it's good. It's got that bit in it, right, where Terry Crews sings along to, I can't remember the pop song, but it's very funny. And it's like a 30-second clip and everyone's like, oh my God, that film is so good because of that. That's the bit I remember. But if you forget the entire film, apart from one part, that does not make it a good film.